Good morning, members of the National Security Council. Thank you for having us. Per your request, we are here to brief you on the most recent updates in the Tenebris incident. My name is Brian. I'll be providing the bluff statement and the incident overview. My colleague Maggie will provide the impact analysis and policy goals. And my colleagues Nick and Chris will brief you on the policy recommendations. The bottom line up front is that the Tenebris incident has resulted in major disruptions in travel logistics, security issues for high-profile individuals and intelligence personnel, potential illicit border crossings, and severe international tensions on a variety of issues. Notably, the Tenebris' CEO has been detained by Belarusian authorities. Additionally, the EU has limited inbound U.S. travel and expressed extreme frustration surrounding U.S. data privacy standards. The incident overview is that Pioneer has created and released a patch for the vulnerability in Pioneer ME software. CIA reports identified the vulnerability's initial access broker as a hacker for hire known as Initiat. The CIA has identified one member of that group, whose name is Makai Iordan, who was last seen in Romania as of March 2023. In addition to initial access attribution, Initiat is responsible for the Tenebris data exfiltration and the dark web sale. Tenebris' CEO, Michelle Jacobs, has been detained by Belarusian authorities, and as well as two unidentified individuals were there at the time. Allegedly, this is in relation to the data breach. Also, there are multiple lawsuits filed against Tenebris by the victims of this data leak. In an attempt to circumvent this potential risk of unauthorized travelers, the European Commission began curtailing the number of landing slots available for flights originating within the U.S. Lastly, the U.S. and EU tensions are continuing to escalate following this incident.
We assess with high confidence that over 100,000 U.S. and EU Tenebris customers have been victimized by this data breach. The data exfiltrated consists of names, addresses, travel history, social security numbers, and biometric data such as photos of the victims' faces. We assess with medium confidence that high-profile individuals and intelligence personnel are among those whose data has been compromised. Airports continue to experience significant operational delays, escalating frustration and unrest among travelers and the media. Russian Federal Security Service agents may use the exfiltrated data to monitor the travel of U.S. intelligence personnel and high-risk individuals. High-profile Tenebris customers are experiencing harassment due to the exposure of their data and are at risk of identity theft. Now, our three recommended policy goals are: first, to investigate the identity of malicious actors and assess the extent of illicit data proliferation online, including theft, manipulation, and exploitation. Second, mitigate the negative impacts to entities, systems, and infrastructure affected by the breach. And lastly, collaborate with international bodies to restore normal travel operations, protect individuals affected by the breach, repair relations with the partners, and secure the release of Tenebris' CEO.
In order to accomplish these policy goals, we recommend the following policy options. Each policy option is grouped into one of three sections, and each section corresponds to one of the three policy goals. The first section pertains to investigation. Within the next 72 hours, it is recommended that DHS, including Homeland Security Investigations and Customs and Border Protection, work with their international counterparts in order to investigate cross-border travel by unknown actors. It is also recommended that the CIA coordinates with DHS to acquire a sample of the data that was leaked from Tenebris to identify if any intelligence assets have been compromised in this breach. In the next 1 to 8 weeks, it is recommended that DHS, NSA, and FBI collaborate in the investigation to investigate any tampered records in Tenebris's customer database, the identity of the buyer of the vulnerability, and to monitor dark web forums for any intelligence relating to this investigation, especially for any more breaches that appear on darknet forums. It is also recommended that the FBI legal attaché in Romania works with his Romanian counterparts in order to locate and apprehend IORTA for interrogation. This section also includes a contingency option. If the DHS is unable to acquire a list of leaked data, then it is recommended that the CIA looks into the feasibility of purchasing the leaked data from darknet forums.
To fulfill our mitigation objective, we recommend first in the next 72 hours that DHS continues to increase and maintain a high level of TSA agents at screening stations and airports to mitigate the congestion, but also that it coordinates with local and state police departments to increase security at the airports. We also recommend that once we have received the list of individuals whose information was compromised in the data leak, that the U.S. intelligence community cross-references that list with their personnel in the field to determine if anyone in the field has had their information compromised, and if so, if they need to be alerted or even extracted. And then in the next 1 to 8 weeks, we recommend DHS and Tenebris maintain a registry for people to go to see if they've been victimized or not, and if they have, attaching to that registry educational resources on how to protect yourself from identity fraud, especially using stronger passwords and multi-factor authentication to mitigate the loss of biometrics. We also recommend that once the malicious entries have been identified and nullified, that DHS assists Tenebris in reactivating their systems, and that DHS works with Tenebris to establish a timeline of when they will be brought back online and assist them with making a public announcement about that timeline. As a contingency, if Tenebris is unable to pay the fines that they will receive from the GDPR lawsuits that are being brought against them, we recommend the Office of Management and Budget look into possible economic options to assist Tenebris with paying those fines in order to restore normal US-EU flight operations sooner. To address our collaborate objective, we recommend that in the next 72 hours, state, DHS, and FBI attachés in impacted countries continue to reach out to their counterparts to identify any needs they have and assist them in providing support. And we recommend that the Secretary of State meets with the Minister of Foreign Affairs in Belarus to negotiate the release of Jacobs. And then in the next 1 to 8 weeks, we recommend that the US CERT and ENISA work together to identify what needs ENISA has and assist them in forensic investigation and remediation efforts. And we recommend that the National Cyber Director goes to meet with his counterparts in Europe to clarify what privacy needs they have, that what needs to be done on their side to restore normal EU-US flight operations and our relations with them generally, and to begin discussion of long-term policy alignment. And then as a contingency here as well, if the meeting between the Secretary of State and the Belarusian Minister of Foreign Affairs doesn't yield any results, we recommend that we bring the issue up in a session of the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe to put pressure on Belarus to release Jacobs. Thank you. We will now take your questions.
Fantastic. Thank you, Wolverines. I will now begin the timer for judges' questions.
have we done an assessment on what the potential impact of this Pioneer ME vulnerability is? Do we know whether it affects other groups involved with aviation that may be using it as well? Like, you know, airlines carry their own biometric information, TSA, Customs and Border Patrol. Have we figured that out yet?
So we have started that process, and since it could potentially be a lengthy investigation, we can definitely get back to you on those official points, but I can say that it has been started.
Okay, and what's the long-term impact from, you know, in your opinions on the biometric theft? I mean, it's not as if you can rotate out your fingerprints. So what are we looking at, you know, after this immediate incident's been contained? What do you think the long-term impact's gonna be?
So it is a big concern because, like you said, people cannot change their biometric information. So they have to compensate in some other way. That may be other forms of authentication that are secure, maybe passwords that teach them how to do passwords that are very secure, as well as multi-factor authentication, which will also help keep them protected. So any organization that currently uses biometric data for authentication could be at risk, and those organizations need to take additional steps in order to protect against that.
Beyond the loss of the biometric data though, and educational resources and switching out passwords and such though, what about all the sources of identity that have been compromised? Are we looking at potential huge costs of having to reissue passports? You know, have we looked at what that sort of backlog is? I know we're talking about surging resources for TSA staff. It seems like that might be an additional step we need to recommend for those people who've had compromised information as a result of the breach.
Yeah, so that's definitely something that specifically on the paper was not identified as a cost that we are anticipating, but obviously that would be something that we need to get in hand going in the future. We're more than welcome to implementing that immediately, and also in the 8-week section. We can work with the Office of Budget and Management to make sure that gets done.
So a few questions about the incident response that's ongoing. One, you note in your briefing that you have high confidence that over 100,000 US and EU customers have been compromised. Do you know what the total size of Tenebris's customer base is?
14 million.
Okay, so this is a small subset of their customer base.
Yes.
So that's why you assert that there's medium confidence that they targeted high-profile individuals within the database?
Yes.
Okay. Which agency has lead for the ongoing incident response efforts under the assumption that they have accepted U.S. government assistance to provide incident response?
DHS is the lead on that.
DHS?
And just to add to that, Tenebris has been extremely cooperative thus far in this process, and they continue to not only accept our help but encourage it.
Okay. And as a policymaker, what is the biggest risk that I should be concerned about from this breach, given that there are multiple elements and multiple angles here?
That's a great question. Just to reiterate that, are you asking from the policymaker of an NSC member which one direction we should go forward, or which one has the most importance in this recommendation?
If we're prioritizing risk, what is the biggest risk stemming from this incident?
So the biggest immediate risk is our intelligence assets, because they could be potentially compromised, and the longer term issue would be biometric data.
Okay.
Especially if data has been altered to allow unfriendly actors to get past airport security.
So it's noted that the tensions that you have been rising under your collaborate section, it says continued coordination with counterparts in impacted countries. I'd like to know kind of what that coordination looks like, and also how that gets at the rising tensions and the EU's concerns.
So we started this option back when the incident first came to light, and what they've been doing is helping, especially with investigation efforts, to determine monitor for anyone that's trying to get past security in European airports. And as well with, on the State Department side of things, just keeping them appraised of our efforts, showing them that we are trying to help, that we're trying to clean up the mess, help fix things. And in the long term going forward, it would be trying to basically trying to show our European allies that we haven't forgotten about them. We want things to go back to normal between us, and identifying what they need from us in order for that to happen.
And in terms of the investigation of tampered records, would you be willing to share that with international partners, or what is your approach to going and finding some of the data that's been leaked? What is the purpose?
So the purpose of finding the leaked data would be to identify if our intelligence assets are in that leaked data and are potentially exposed to unknown actors. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I'm also thinking more the EU and its basic halting of international flights based on their own concern with who is traveling and who's not. Would you be willing to share some of the compromised records with them so they can also vet some of that information too?
Potentially, we would have to look at the legal ramifications of doing so. That would be an option.
We've had we've had some actions in the past with trying to evaluate information to be shared with private partners involved in this situation and with Five Eyes. We can do the same for sharing information with Europe, especially since some of Tenebras's systems and their data storage is actually in Europe. I believe that under GDPR, they are required to share that with the European countries there.
So you cited the operational delays, the frustration, the unrest amongst travelers. What are the potential security issues at airports, and how are we working with local authorities and the federal agencies to coordinate on that? And then what are our media options for continuing to do outreach and continuing to communicate associated issues with the ongoing incident?
I can touch on the media if Chris wants to talk about media, law enforcement, additional security. Yeah. So the media outrage and the public unrest could be mitigated by having Tenebris and local airports send out public reminders on various media sources and send out emails through their airlines and applications for notifications to tell them to come to the airports 4 to 5 hours earlier. We're seeing social media things of Tenebris customers complaining about 2 hours isn't long enough, 3 hours isn't long enough, and some waits up to 4 or more hours. So a big thing would to notify everybody, plan for this in advance. We apologize for the inconvenience. We're working on everything we can, and that would be implemented immediately. And it has been implemented over the past 2 weeks since this last incident update.
And on the law enforcement side, so the main risks that we're concerned with when it comes to the airports and the leaking of this flight records and information, we've had individuals, especially celebrities, high profile people, who have been swarmed in the airports, sometimes by not super friendly people. And there's a risk with, especially with people being able to get past the screening stations if they have like an altered identity or something. If they can analyze the records to see where like high profile government people are at sometimes, there's a safety risk posted with them. So what we would do is coordinate with local and state law enforcement. For example, at the Salt Lake City airport, mostly the police department there is Salt Lake City PD. We would increase their numbers there, and we would look into using FPS to increase numbers at airports. FPS is limited in the numbers that they have, so they won't be able to, they would be more supplementary to the local law enforcement.
We have 10 seconds left. All right, I will pause it there. Competitors, thank you very much.